You said on your podcast, this was 2 days ago.
Oh boy, I don't remember what I said.
Oh, here we go. You said, speaking of MAGA lunatics who are disgustingly serving as the lapdogs of insanity, we've now learned who will be the impeachment managers for Republicans processing an impeachment against the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. How do you think Mayorkas has performed as Director of Homeland Security, which is a job that's main responsibility is to counter terrorism and enhance security, secure and manage our borders?
I think that his performance has been unremarkable in the way that many secretaries of Homeland Security have been. The first thing is I draw a distinction between the border and terrorism. Now, the first part is sometimes the framing on some of these issues from the right, I don't think is accurate. And in this case, these allegations that there are endless terrorists coming in over the US-Mexico border, that, quote, and these are not words I use, but that mental institutions are being emptied into the United States. You know, a lot of these claims are being made totally without evidence. A lot of the claims about fentanyl or fentanyl, as some on the right call it, I don't know why they say that, but that's what they say, being trafficked over the US-Mexico border. To a great degree, precursor chemicals are being flown in. A lot of it is coming in through legal ports of entry. So like it's not totally untrue, but it's only a fraction of it. You know, with a lot of this stuff, there's a bunch of different distortion and half-truths.
Right. But do you think so far he has done a good job fortifying the southern border?
I don't know that by fortification, I know exactly what you mean. There have been a couple of changes from Trump to Biden. Mm-hmm. They've not been super significant. One related to Title 42 and the justification of COVID for the faster deportation of individuals.
That was that the Remain in Mexico?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's been a change, but there have not been dramatic changes to Border Patrol budgets. I mean, here's my honest opinion about this. Mm-hmm. I've said before, although the facts are that documented and undocumented immigrants commit crime at a lower rate than natural-born citizens, countries have a right to have immigration policy, enforce it, deportations are legal. You know, I'm not someone... This exists on the left, but I'm not someone who just goes, everyone, period, should be just allowed in. We should have an open border. My family did it legally. We were not in as dire a situation as some of the folks that are coming and seeking asylum. Seeking asylum is legal, so we just need to adjudicate that more quickly. For me, the real issue is I see this entire thing. 2 days after Biden became president, they were talking about the border. Nothing had dramatically changed in those 2 days.
What did change?
A Democrat was in the White House.
That's all that changed?
In those 2 days?
So it was 2 days after they started talking about it. But then shortly afterwards, didn't he rescind all of the border policy, or not all of the border policy, but a good amount of the border policy that was instated by Trump?
It wasn't so much about rescinding, but they more actively started trying to reconnect families that had been separated. There are still border separations happening, but it's fewer. I think my point is this. We should have a border. We got to deal with visa overstays, which isn't a sexy topic, so they never talk about that. All of these things should be dealt with, but right now, the idea that things are dramatically disastrous under Biden compared to how they were under Trump is a reaction to the fact that they don't really have anything to run on, which is why they're running on Biden crimes that don't exist, at least as far as they've been able to find evidence, and they're running on the border. Because the economy is, as we talked about, by most economic metrics, pretty good. Student loan forgiveness, some improvements on healthcare and healthcare access, negotiating pharma costs, infrastructure bill. So they just don't really have anything.
Right. But on the border, wasn't there a lot more strict policy on how you can enter the United States when Trump was president? And then a lot of that was rescinded by Biden when he got into office.
The only thing I'm aware of being rescinded is Title 42. I am not an expert on the border. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I'm aware of that functionally changed was Title 42.
Do you think Title 42 would be a good thing? Obviously, I know why it was instated, which was the whole using COVID as a reason. But do you think that that is a reasonable, let's say, framework for new policy to be instated to prevent or to limit and filter the immigration a little bit more?
The problem with it is it's going to put a lot of people in really dangerous and risky situations. So I know that there's a lot of discussion about false and bogus asylum claims. Those have to be figured out and weeded out. I think it's actually easier to do that when individuals come and present themselves at the border rather than filing some form from southern Mexico or whatever the case may be. So I think we risk, assuming we have empathy and concern for folks with legitimate asylum claims in Mexico or countries south. I think the way to keep them safest is to allow them to make that claim at the border. What I think is problematic is not that bogus asylum claims are being granted. It's that the process is so slow that it's taking too long. And a lot of the complaints from the right about, these people, dehumanizing language, they enter our country and then you don't know where they go and and then they never show up. If the asylum system moved more quickly, you would cut down on a ton of that. So I think we need more immigration judges. I have friends in Border Patrol and Customs. They all say we need way more immigration judges to adjudicate more quickly.
Do you think that we should be trusting people that come to the southern border? And my understanding is all you have to say is, I fear for my government, wherever I'm coming from. I fear that they're going to come after me or something. You are filtered then into the United States with an eventual court date. And I don't think that there is any incentive to actually show up to this court date.
It's a very complicated question.
Right.
That's all you need to initially say. But these, from what I understand from my friends and colleagues that are in customs and border enforcement, et cetera, the asylum process is more than just that initial statement. That's just how you're basically declaring, I'm seeking asylum. Then there is an adjudication process. My understanding is the adjudication process is not a corrupt, non-functional process. It's just that it takes too long and there's not enough immigration judges involved. That's my understanding right now.
So you think so far in the years of Biden's presidency, this immigration, the whole thing going on with immigration is so far fine or so far sub-fine?
There has been undocumented immigration to the United States for a really long time. The numbers of those encountered crossing illegally ebbs and flows for a lot of different reasons, including combination of policy, seasonally, COVID, and different reasons. It's not unique to the Biden administration that people are entering the U.S. illegally. Is it a problem that some people who enter the U.S. illegally commit crimes? That's absolutely a problem. They happen to commit them at a lower rate than natural-born citizens.
But crossing the border illegally is a crime.
Yes. Oh, and you're eligible for deportation. It is a misdemeanor. It's not a felony, which there's people who don't understand that. You're eligible for deportation. Countries have a right to enforce border policy. There's no argument from me on that.
But the border enforcement so far has been fine.
If the standard for fine is no one has crossed illegally, it's not been fine under Biden.
Your standard for
and
fine.
It's not been fine under Trump. My standard is that we need to be doing a combination of things we aren't doing to dramatically reduce the amount of people who try to cross. Neither Biden nor Trump nor Obama did them. Those things are, you've got to punish the companies that are hiring undocumented immigrants, because if you don't, the incentive for them to keep coming over here, by the way, to work in really difficult jobs, often in poor conditions, right? So this is not easy work, but you've got to do something about the companies that are doing the hiring. Not enough is being done there. In theory, it's against the law. Very little prosecution of that. We should be working with the source countries that folks are coming from to change the economic circumstances that make them take the risks of coming here in the first place. We're not doing that. We've got to deal with visa overstays, which is a big aspect of it that doesn't get a lot of attention. We need to more quickly adjudicate asylum claims. We've got to do something permanent on DACA, meaning those who were minors when they came here. There's this long list of stuff that needs to be done. It's not fine. Overall, it's not fine now. It hasn't been for decades. It's not especially bad under Biden, is my view.
So it's not changing anything with the immigrants that are coming through the border, but it's reforming things that are already existing internally, such as putting a little bit more burden or pressure onto corporations, and then working, like you said, with the source countries, not necessarily stopping, obviously, for lack of a better term, stopping with the direct immigrants crossing the border. Like, hey, you can't do that.
It's completely fine to do that. I have no problem with enforcing that you should not be allowed to do that. My point is, it's not an acutely bad problem right now. And if these right-wingers were really serious about dealing with the problem, and the same thing applies to Democrats who also haven't fixed it, if they were really serious about the problem, there's 5 or 6 other things they don't even have any interest in talking about to put their money where their mouths are. They just want to talk about the physical border because it's what's politically salient right now.